Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm glad to see
Good
and
morning.
hear all of you.
Good morning.
I asked to have some time to talk with you because I know that there's a lot going on in the world. There are many voices coming at you, whether it be in printed media, social media, other people talking. And the voices that come at us can influence us. But it's important to remain calm and level headed. As a matter of fact, we often use this word God, something that we call on. And is anyone familiar with etymology? Anyone can answer. Do you know what etymology is?
The worshiping of animals.
Oh, what?
You say etymology?
No, etymology.
Oh no, sir.
Okay, so etymology is the study of words, how they come to be, how the meaning changes. You can look up a word and get a meaning, but that's often the current meaning. Then you can look up the history of the word. So the etymology, remember, God is just a word. The meaning is often it is different than the word, okay? But the etymology is from an old Irish word, guth, G-U-T-H, and it means voice. So there are many voices coming at you, but there's really one voice that you need to pay attention to, and it's a voice inside all of us. And I just want to have this moment to redirect everyone to that power that is within each of us. All right, so let me share my screen so that you can see this presentation.
That's good stuff, Mr. Trammell.
Oh,
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me tell you a little bit more about me. So I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I moved to Georgia in 2003. I graduated medical school from Harry Medical College, and I moved to Georgia to get away from my life in Nashville and family, and just to get a change of environment and scenery, which has been good. At present, I am on the faculty in the School of Medicine in EMYI. I do research. I see patients at Grady. My area of research is in Alzheimer's disease and African Americans. So I have an interest in minority health. There's been a lot of talk about health disparities and unequal health outcomes. That's what a disparity is. Something that is different or unequal. Regarding African Americans in terms of the current coronavirus pandemic. Again, I know that there's a lot of information coming at you, but let's take some time to talk about what these health disparities are, why they exist, because I don't want you to have this feeling that you're doomed or that there's something unique and special about you for the worse instead of the better. That's a little bit about me. All right. For those of you who can see my slides, this is a quote from Barack Obama. For those of you who are on the phone, I'll read it. I think it's important to recognize that the African American community is looking at this issue through a set of experiences and a history that doesn't go away. And President Obama was talking about the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Let's move on. So coronavirus. Remember that quote because it's going to feature prominently in our discussion. So if you don't know, coronavirus is the cause of the common cold. So it's not new. It spreads through the air. You can touch a dirty surface that will have a particle of the virus on it, then touch your face, and it gets into your body, will cause an infection. It usually will infect the nose, sinus area, and the throat. So you get runny nose and cough. Typically it's mild, but it can be deadly. In particular, two deadly forms is one is MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. The other one is SARS. You may have heard of both of them. And SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. The current pandemic is caused by a mutation of the coronavirus that we call SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2. That stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. You may have heard the term COVID-19, and that means coronavirus illness. So that's a person who becomes ill from coronavirus, or in particular, the SARS-CoV-2 mutation of the coronavirus. This is a little scientific, but the way the virus gets into the body is by a receptor on cells. The reason this is important is because this particular receptor works with blood pressure medications. Blood pressure medications that are not that effective in African Americans, right? Blood pressure medications that tend to be more effective in whites and Asians. So that being the case, if the coronavirus receptor, or I should say the receptor that coronavirus uses to get into the body and cause infection, isn't really that effective in African Americans, what is our risk of infection overall? And that's what I'm showing you with this chart. So for those of you on the phone, this is a chart showing the risk of infection by race and ethnicity. The highest risk group are Asians, people in Japan and China. African Americans only have a medium risk for coronavirus infection. So if we only have a medium risk for the infection, why are we seeing all these headlines? Public health expert says African Americans are at greater risk of death from coronavirus. That's one headline. Another headline, early data shows African Americans have contracted and died of coronavirus at an alarming rate. Another headline, African Americans seem to be dying of the coronavirus at outsized rates. Another, amid the coronavirus pandemic, Black distrust of medicine wins. Let's talk about this distrust, okay? So recall, Barack Obama said, a history and set of experiences that does not go away. A set of experiences. Let's go back in time a little bit to the Tuskegee experiment. Have any of you heard of that?
I have.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it? Or what was it?
It was back in the I forgot. I think it was during segregation, and they picked a group of African American men with syphilis, and instead of giving them the treatment when penicillin did come out, they let them die to record the like what happens when someone gradually has it over time, which my time that leads to death, and a couple other issues.
Right on. That's right. So between 1932 and 1972, the government, the United States Public Health Service, actually infected African American men with syphilis. Here's what makes this an absolute travesty. The treatment for syphilis, penicillin, or I should say penicillin, was found to be effective to treat syphilis in 1943. But the study continued until 1972, and no treatment was given to these men. On the slide at the very bottom, there's a quote from a physician and researcher, and I absolutely agree with this quote, that the Tuskegee experiment was a metaphor of deceit, conspiracy, malpractice, neglect, if not outright genocide. So this happened between 1932 and 1972. Here we are in 2020, and some of you have heard of this and know about it. This is a set of experiences and a history that does not go away because you know about this. Someone has told you about this, and it's probably not just something that you've learned in school, but a mistrust of the government and the healthcare system is absolutely endemic and ingrained in our culture, and for good reason. And this is an example of why there is such poor trust between African Americans and science, government, etc. Right. Let's delve into the history. So for those of you who are on the phone, I'm showing a map, an 1860 census map of the Southeast. The dark areas are counties that had slaves. So as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, there were 4 million humans in the Southeast by 1860. They lacked formal healthcare service. So as a result, they relied on traditional and folk cures. This was the foundation of a lasting inequality in health. This is 1860. So all the dark, the gray and black areas, those are the counties with the most slave populations. Let's look at 2014. So on this map, all the orange areas that you see here are counties in the Southeast where a lot of people are dying. They had the highest mortality rate, the highest death rate. So let's look at both of these maps together. 1860, 2014. You put them on top of each other, you see how similar they are?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a history,
Yes.
a set of experiences that does not go away, right? Over 158 years, it's not a coincidence that where the most people are dying, also where the most African Americans are. So the largest population of African Americans in the United States reside in the Southeast, period. So again, look at the two maps overlaid and look at where the most dementia among Black people happens to be in the Southeast. Look at where the most Black people was Alzheimer's in the Southeast. That map is an unfortunate part of our legacy and culture. Look at heart disease. So the darker red areas, again, that's where more people have heart disease in the Southeast, where the most African Americans are. Now, let's step back and look at an example of inequality. So the map on the left, right here, is showing you Blacks with dementia. The map on the right is showing you white people with dementia. Okay? So darker blue means more people have dementia. So as you can see, there is a huge inequality. There is a difference in health. Look at Alzheimer's disease. Blacks on the left, darker blue means more. Whites on the right. And you see it's not as dark. So there are more African Americans who suffer from disease, period, heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure. You name it, in many cases, it affects our communities and people more than others. But it's not just a history that doesn't go away. Social conditions have not changed as much as we would like to think that they have. This chart is showing you poverty across a 10-year period from 2008 to 2018. So on the top, you have African Americans or Blacks. On the bottom, you have whites. For those of you who can see the chart, do you see this gap? So in 2008, almost 10% of whites were living in poverty compared to nearly 25% of Blacks in our country. Now, over time, over the 10-year period, it went down. But I mean, is it really that much of a difference to go from, say, 25% to 22% poverty?
No, sir.
Right. I mean, and it didn't change that much for the whites. So you see a set of experiences and a history that just doesn't go away. Social differences can equal health differences. Are you guys starting to see that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Dr. Trammell, this is Hunter. I was looking at the Surgeon General yesterday. He was talking about the same subject, and the reasons he was giving for African Americans and people of color getting the coronavirus is he was saying that it's not about a biological difference between us and white people in different races. It's just that the standards and the norms we're living, and as far as being in more crammed housings and like in inner cities, that we're more vulnerable to being in contact with other people.
Diet and lifestyle is what the TV doctors and pundits are attributing it to. Weigh in on that, Dr. Trammell. Is that the real reason?
Okay. So that's actually a nice transition to the next slide. Stress and poverty. Poverty is stressful. When you live in poverty, you are stressed. And stress is defined as when you have problems or issues that are greater than your ability to cope or greater than your available resources. Okay. So people who live in poverty don't have the best food choices. People who live in poverty may not be able to exercise. You know, eating healthy for some reason seems to be more expensive than eating some junk food. I don't know why. I can go to a store and buy a bag of potato chips and, I don't know, Kool-Aid or, you know, some type of juice, and it's cheaper than buying some fresh produce. You know, that's just concerning, and it's downright frustrating.
Absolutely.
So also with poverty, you don't have health insurance. Right? So then you have more people, yes, who are living in crammed conditions, who have undertreated disease states or untreated disease states, and that leads to an increased vulnerability to bad health effects. That leads to more high blood pressure, more heart disease, more diabetes, more dementia. We don't often think about dementia and Alzheimer's disease as something that affects, or I should say, as being related to the heart and our blood vessels, but it is. And if your heart isn't good, remember the heart pumps blood to the brain along with the rest of the body. If your heart isn't pumping blood to the brain good, then your brain is not going to function well, right? So I want to dramatically emphasize to you that stress, poverty, poor health states does affect the body. And on the right of this slide, I have a drawing of the heart. So if you see the bottom, it says right ventricle and left ventricle. So pay attention to the left ventricle, because here, let's see if I can show it. This is a cardiac catheterization, and that's a procedure where you inject dye into the heart, and you're going to see the outline of the left ventricle. So broken heart syndrome was first described in Japanese women, and it's due to stress. Now, these women had experienced some type of profound emotional upset, say like atomic bombs being dropped on your country, or death, some type of stress, even romantic heartbreak. And it can change the way the body functions, because when you're stressed, you have higher levels of something called adrenaline. So adrenaline is not just fight or flight. It's also chronic stress. And you can see here that it has a very bad effect on the body. Right. So you see where it says normal? That's what the heart should look like. Now, I want you to look at, you see how the tip, let's find a good example here. Go back. Right here. All right. So look at the normal left ventricle of the heart, how it kind of comes to a nice little point right here. That's normal. But look at what happens in the broken heart, where there's a lot of adrenaline and other bad hormones circulating in the body. The tip kind of balloons out. So basically, the heart becomes a little bit more dilated, and that's not good. So literally, stress can affect every part of your body, and it can even break your heart down in ways that it does not need to be broken down. Any questions on that?
As far as the broken heart syndrome, what like medical issues does that cause to the person that has it?
Okay. Chest pain, shortness of breath. If you go to a hospital and get evaluated, it will look like you're having a heart attack. And it's not until an ultrasound of the heart is done that you'll find it's not in fact a heart attack, but that the heart has become bigger. It is reversible, as you know, a lot of the health effects from chronic stress that can be due to poverty in any number of social conditions, they are reversible if they're caught. But over time, the damage is less reversible. Okay? So by the way, in Japanese, this is called takatsubo, which means octopus trap. And that's because if you look at the outline of the broken heart, it resembles an octopus trap that Japanese fishermen would use. So let's move on. Education and health. On this slide, for those of you who are on the phone, I'm showing kind of a stream, if you will. So it starts off with early life factors, parental social economic status, physical and mental health. So your economic status, or as a child, the economic status of your parents can impact your physical and mental health. Why? Resources, coping. How can you manage stress? So food, the quality of food, the ability to exercise, health insurance coverage. These factors often impact the next step, education, and your attainment of education, meaning how far do you go? And your educational attainment rather, impacts what you can accomplish as an adult. It can impact your wealth and even determine your wealth. And your wealth and your knowledge will impact or dictate your health behaviors and how well you think. So the more you learn, the more you earn. The more you earn, the better you can take care of yourself. Right? And all of these factors can then turn around and impact your life expectancy. Isn't that interesting? I find it interesting because one of the most attacked systems that I've found in our nation is education. Meaning, among policymakers, one of the most widely unequal areas is education. And education, in turn, will impact how well you live and how long you live. Education is life. So on this slide, what I'm showing you is that at the age of 25, by the age of 25, how much education you have will impact how long you live. So on the left, it's looking at men and women who did not graduate high school by the age of 25. They can expect to live another 50 years for women and another 44 years for men. But look at people who have a graduate degree. So they've gone to college, gone to graduate school, professional school or something. So by the age of 25, they can expect to live another 62 years for women and another 60 years for men. Education is a powerful resource. So when you go back and you think about that 1860 Census Map, you know, I said the social conditions were important, and that was a part of the set of experiences and a history, a legacy effect that does not go away. And overall, what this legacy effect has created is a cycle of poverty, a cycle of poor education, a cycle of poor health. So it's not that African Americans are just have, as Hunter mentioned from the Surgeon General, a particular genetic or biological weakness that plays into getting the coronavirus infection. I've showed you that we actually have a lower risk of being infected with coronavirus, but when we do get it, it's worse. And that's because we're living with more chronic health conditions. That's because more of us are in conditions of poverty, in cycles of poor education and poverty, poor health outcomes. So in wrapping up, kind of cycling back to coronavirus, the infection will stop spreading when a majority of the population is immune. There are two ways that the population can become immune. Vaccine, which is not yet available, or people can get the infection and develop their own antibodies. However, with infection comes the risk of death. So for now, it's important that you cover your nose and your mouth, wear a mask, wash your hands so that you don't touch a dirty surface, and then touch your face or whatever and allow the virus to get inside your body, and keep your distance from people. Remember, it's spread through the air in addition to touching a contaminated surface. Now, my closing thoughts to all of you. A present is a gift. If you get a Christmas present, you consider that to be a gift, right? But the present is also used in the sense of time. So don't waste the gift of now. The present is a gift. Don't waste it. Now is an opportunity to better yourself. It is a precious gift that comes from that inner voice. Use it. Take advantage of every opportunity and every moment that you have to educate yourself. Because if you don't care where your life is going, then any road will lead you there. So if you shape your mind, if you guide and focus your mind, then you are taking control of your life. You can quiet all of those external voices and focus clearly and see your way from where you think you want to be to actually physically arriving there, making it manifest. So the first speaker mentioned branding. Shape yourself, sculpt yourself into who and what you can be, and make it the best that you can be. The second speaker mentioned saving money. But saving money requires that you are able to overcome and overpower the urges that other people are telling you. As soon as you get some money, you shouldn't think, oh, what can I buy? You should think, how can I become more wealthy? Am I going to be $1 richer? Am I going to be 25 cents richer? Whatever, $1,000 richer, right? So use your resources, and you are your best resources. You are your best resource, rather. Young man, you have a golden here with all of the mentors and the people who are willing to talk with you and to help you out. The more you learn, the more that you shape yourself will improve your communities, your children, their children, and so on, so that we can do something about that map. Yes, I'm a doctor, but a lot of my work, a lot of my passion is in helping young Black males, because you are our future. We need stable homes. We need stable communities. A part of the cycle of poverty and low education attainment allows our communities to be disproportionately impacted by gentrification, because we don't have the economic means and the power base to stop this from occurring. We are the help that we need. You are the next generation. So take advantage of all that you have in front of you. Focus yourself, discipline yourself. Don't don't believe and buy into all the hype. Use your resources. If you want to contact me, that's my email address. Dr. Torrance also has my email address. I'm happy to communicate with any of you. At this time, I will take some questions if you have any.